Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of York, the 22nd largest Rotary Club in the world. We're glad to have you join us today. Now, today we're focusing on baseball, so I hope everybody has their hot dog with them handy in their seats, wherever they might be. And we'll be beginning with an opening song, which is called Center Field. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. It's by John Fogerty, who's the lead singer of Creedence Clearwater Revival. That will be performed by past President Brian Tate, and our invocation will be offered by David Lovelace. Brian.
Thank you, President Josh. Please join me if you'd like. Well, I'll beat the drum and hold the phone. The sun came out today. We're born again. There's new grass on the field. Around in third and heading for home. It's a brown-eyed, handsome man. Anyone can understand the way I feel. Oh, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. Look at me. I can be center field. Well, I spent some time in the Mudville 9, watching it from the bench. You know, I took some lumps when the mighty Casey struck out. So say, hey, Willie, tell the Cobb and Joe DiMaggio, don't say it ain't so, you know the time is now. Oh, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. Look at me. I can be center field. And now with our opening prayer, Rotarian David Lovelace.
Please join me in prayer. Oh God, in the course of our busy lives, you remind us to provide times of refreshment and peace to renew our minds and our bodies. We human beings have the capacity to be creative. We give thanks for music, art, and for sport that fill our leisure time in ways that refresh and renew us. As we look to a time beyond the current pandemic when we can once again gather to enjoy sports and art, we pray your blessing on all who share their talents for our enjoyment. God of mercies, in this time of need, we humbly beseech you to visit and relieve those suffering from the coronavirus throughout the world. Comfort them with a sense of your goodness. Give us patience as we try to strive to defeat this pandemic. Give strength to families impacted by this virus and those quarantined to prevent its spread. Guard those who work to relieve the suffering, the many various people in many positions who put their lives in danger to serve the needs of others. Guide those who speak where many listen so that we might discern the truth during this time of anxiety and enable those in authority to make wise decisions for the well-being of all humanity. We pray in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate that. And now we have something really fun. We haven't done this in a while, and we're really excited to be able to do so. We'd like to induct a new member today. And as we always do, we invite Mike King to do that induction. Mike, will you please do so?
I'm happy to do so. I can find myself on the screen here for a moment. It is my pleasure to induct Mark Wheeler into our club. Mark is homegrown, a graduate of Red Lion Area High School, earned his bachelor's degree at Penn State, and also holds an MBA from York College. Mark was recently appointed as Chief Operating Officer at the York Water Company, succeeding, and I say succeeding, not replacing, succeeding JT Hand. I mean, who could replace JT Hand? When JT was appointed as CEO, and that was following the retirement of Jeff Hines as CEO. And I have to say, Jeff has to get the all-time best timing of a CEO retirement. Anyone I know, I think it was about 2 weeks before the pandemic shut everybody down. Anyway, Mark's involved with the community in a number of ways. He is currently on the advisory board of Penn State York. He is a board member of the Red Lion Area Education Foundation. He is on the board of governors of the Country Club of York and currently vice president of that board. He also had previous involvement with the community with the United Way of York and Junior Achievement. His hobbies include, he says he's a huge sports fan, which I know to be true. Penn State, Philadelphia Phillies, Flyers, Sixers, and Buffalo Bills. I'm pleased to say he doesn't include the Eagles in that group, which would be a real negative. He is married to Tanya. They are the parents of adult children, Adam, Cameron, and Cooper. And his proposer is J.T. Hand. So please clap silently and welcome Mark Wheeler to our club.
Mark, welcome. Thank you. Look forward to getting to know you here as maybe we get back to in-person meetings at some point in the not too distant future. Look forward to having you join our club and become part of all the great things that the Rotary Club of York does. And JT, thank you for proposing Mark for membership. Appreciate your membership and the water company's support of the Rotary Club of York. Thanks both. Thank you, Mike, for doing the induction as well. All right, we're on to some announcements today. A quick reminder that Program Committee Chair Mike Summers is always looking for good program ideas. I mentioned this last week as well, and probably will for the next few weeks. It's been very challenging over the last 2 months to find programs every week, and we've done a lot of juggling, and we appreciate all of our Rotary members who have stepped up to provide programs over the last couple of months. And to illustrate this point, even just yesterday, we were juggling around the program for next week. We're all set at this point, but Mike's done a great job, and we would really appreciate any ideas that you have to help Mike with programs, particularly if those programs are well suited to the online environment. So if you have any ideas, please reach out via email to Mike Summers, and we'll make sure that program gets slotted in as quickly as possible. Okay. We also today want to recognize some of the youth in the community. This is something that we would normally have done in person, and we would have invited these students to come to one of our meetings at the Country Club of York, but we can't do that in this environment. So instead, I'm just going to mention it. The Youth Leadership Committee annually sponsors an award to one student at York College, one student at Penn State York, and one student at the Hack York campus for the Rotary Service Award. The recipients this year are Eli Thornton, who's attending York College, Cheyenne Graham, who is attending Penn State York, and Molly Hunter-Mark, who is attending the Hack York campus. Eli is majoring in secondary education with mathematics, Cheyenne in biology, and Molly in psychology. Checks for $250 were mailed to the colleges for these students in recognition of their work, and we hope that each of them has a great year coming up and is finished out this year as well as possible. If we can, we'll get them to one of our future club meetings coming up, so you can all get a chance to meet them and say hello. So again, congratulations, Eli, Cheyenne, and Molly. Quick reminder that May 31st is the deadline to submit applications for the Donna Hayes Equine Scholarship. This is a scholarship that was set up by Rotarian Al Hayes in honor of his late wife, Donna. And the applicants must be full-time college students majoring in an equine-related field, and applications are on the club's website. Rotarians can also reach out to Renee for additional information. This coming Saturday, there is another tree planting. The PPE committee has been hard at work during the COVID pandemic. This will be the third tree planting this spring. And after Saturday's planting, they will have planted over 50 trees this spring alone. Many thanks to the PPE committee, particularly the work of Aaron Jacobs and Al Sykes. We really appreciate your efforts. And if you're interested in participating, I think they have enough volunteers for this weekend, but if you're interested in participating, reach out to Aaron or Al, and they'll make sure you have an opportunity to plant some trees with them in the future. And a quick note of happy birthday. Today happens to be Rotarian Jack Shorb's birthday. Jack, happy birthday. It's great to have you as a member of our club. I got to know Jack through Rotary. Got to know him just having lunch and spent some time with him at our meetings. Really enjoyed getting to know Jack. And then last year, I got to know his son, Andy, and his grandson Brendan, through the York Suburban Middle School cross country program. Andy's the head coach there, and Brendan's one of the runners. He runs with my son, Liam, at the Suburban Middle School program. So Jack, happy birthday. Thanks for being a member of our club. Okay, it is poll time, and keeping with our baseball theme this week, we have a fun little poll. This was sent in by one of our Rotarians, and I will say that we're always looking for good poll ideas. So if you have those, please send them to me or Courtney. We really appreciate that. And Courtney, you have that on the screen? Yes, there it is. So today's poll question is, who would you be more likely to vote for as Rotary Club president? Only two choices today. They are Al Sykes or downtown. Who do you think would be a better Rotary president, Al Sykes or downtown? A fun poll question sent in by one of our faithful observers who's watched most of our meetings. We really appreciate this poll. We'll give everybody a few moments to send their votes in, and we'll tally those up, and Courtney will announce the results here in a few moments. But again, if you have ideas for poll, please send them to me. Right now, we don't have any for our June meetings, so if you could, we'd love your ideas. And Courtney, how are we doing on these results?
Doing well. We have about 70 people who have voted so far. We have a total of about 120 on the line right now. So far, 65% of Rotarians on the call are voting for downtown.
Only 65%?
Correct.
Wow, Al Sykes is doing way better than we thought.
So we're going to do another 10 seconds here. And we'll read the final results. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so final results are in. 38% vote Al Sykes, 62% downtown.
Al, congratulations. You did way better than we expected. Downtown, you took it home just like we thought you would. Thanks everybody for voting today. It's a fun time. It sticks with our baseball theme. We really enjoy it. And we appreciate everybody voting and participating and watching our program today. Now, as we've done again for quite a few weeks now, we have a nice local business spotlight. Today, the spotlight shines on North Industrial Chemicals here in the city of York. I'm sure most of you know many of the Rotarians, 3 in fact, who are members of our club who work at North Industrial. Fred Fay, of course, Bill Hunter and Jeff Hamill. Thank you to each of them for being members of our Rotary Club. And just a quick overview of North Industrial. They started in 1921, actually, but were reorganized in 1945 and are in their 4th generation of family ownership. They produce and distribute a wide range of chemicals that support the food processing, brewing and distilling, wastewater, and transportation industries. And as luck might have it, they were well positioned for the COVID outbreak because one of the things that they've been able to produce is sanitizers. And they've been working hard to increase their production of those sanitizers and help those get shipped out to the many businesses and industries that use their product. They do a lot of their own shipping. They distribute all throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, and they will also distribute nationwide with shipping partners, but they do all their own distribution locally here throughout the Mid-Atlantic. So Fred, Jeff, Bill, thanks for being members of the Rotary Club of York. It's great to recognize the business, your business, and what you guys are doing in the community and how you've been able to pivot with the COVID pandemic. Thanks again. As always, we're looking for local business spotlight companies as well. We're happy to spotlight for-profit businesses, nonprofit businesses, governmental agencies. Anybody who'd like to be spotlighted, please let me know and be happy to get you on here. And with that, I would like to introduce our program. Today's speakers are Eric Menzer and Rick White. We all know Eric is a fellow Rotarian, president of the York Revolution Baseball Club. And Eric, please take it away.
Thanks, President Josh, and greetings from People's Bank Park, which is where I get to be today. I couldn't tell you how much I wish all of you could be here with me upstairs in our typical format, introducing our great York Revolution baseball team. Obviously, a bit different situation and a bit different format today. I want to start by introducing the president of the Atlantic League, Rick White. Rick, many of you've met Rick in person here at our previous on-site meetings of our club. Rick's got a long career in the sports industry. He started off with Major League Baseball and has come back to his roots for the last 6 years as the president of the Atlantic League of Professional Baseball. Take it away, Rick.
Eric, thanks so much, and thanks everyone for having Eric and me today. It's my pleasure to be with you again. This is one of the highlights of my spring. Before I get going, I'd just like to note 2 things. Number one, want to call out Courtney and say thank you. She puts a tremendous amount of energy into these presentations, and behind the scenes, she's just splendid. So Courtney, thank you so much for arranging today's meeting. And then I wanted to note that we would be entering our 3rd weekend of play if we were dealing with a normal situation. I don't have to belabor the point that we're not dealing with a normal situation, but it is a point of departure for us, and it's something that we lament. But like you, we will prevail, and I'm delighted to talk to you today about the Atlantic League. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today. First, I wanted to talk to you about our status coming into the season. Would like to share with you what we are doing this year and where we currently are. And then I wanted to turn to cover our relationship with Major League Baseball and where we think the industry is headed and where we think the Atlantic League and the New York Revolution are going to fit into the industry of professional baseball as it evolves. So let's talk about coming into this year. We had a stellar 2019. We introduced a brand new team, as I shared with you last year, in the community of High Point, North Carolina. Not only were they successful on the field and off the field, I will tell you that as part of our objectives in establishing that ball club, they have served as a tremendous stimulus to the downtown area of High Point, North Carolina. This is very similar to what's gone on in York. The data point for us is the new ballpark, the establishment of this ball club, and the team itself have led to over $125 million of new investment in the community, specifically in the area around the ball club. We had attendance increases and, I should say, better weather last year than we had the previous year. So we were very happy about that. We had almost 2.5 million people observe Atlantic League games last year. And for an 8-team league, that's really a remarkable number if you stop and think about it. We began a conversation last year that I think you'll be interested in. We have evolved this conversation into the establishment of a brand new ballpark in Gastonia, North Carolina. The significance of that is profound for our players and our teams. This gives us effectively a travel partner in North Carolina, meaning that a team doesn't have to travel a great distance to merely play 3 or 4 games. Now the Revs will go to High Point, they'll travel on from there to Gastonia before returning home, and that's a much better process for all concerned, both in terms of host clubs, but also visiting clubs as well. As most of you know, last year we started on the great experiment with Major League Baseball. This is really quite remarkable when you think about it. We did have a working agreement with Major League Baseball prior to last year, but that largely covered the transfer of players from our clubs to big league organizations. Because of the stature of our players and the high skill set of our players, they asked us, as you'll recall, to begin testing rules and various equipment initiatives on our field of play. I'll never forget last year's All-Star game when we introduced the automated ball strike system. Some of you may have heard of it and called it RoboUmp. The benefit of this, though, was that we were able, for the first time in the history of the sport, to provide a standardized, consistent strike zone, not only across the league, but throughout our clubs. Because of our success, that system has now been extended to the Arizona Fall League, It would have been used in spring training play. We do not know if it will be used now in spring training play as Major League Baseball looks forward to starting up again. But there are at least discussions going on where Major League Baseball may adopt this system as soon as this season, but more likely it will take place prior to next season or during next season. Again, that started in the Atlantic League. This year, regardless of when MLB commences play, some of the rules we pioneered in the league will take place on the field of MLB. The most conspicuous one will be that each pitcher has to face a full 3 batters before they can be removed from the game. So that was, again, something we pioneered. We're very proud of that, and we're going to see more of these initiatives take hold as we move forward. We have, regardless of what happens for the Atlantic League this year, already extended our agreement with Major League Baseball to cover another full season, and we expect this relationship is going to endure. The reason that's important has to do with what's currently going on, not only in our league, but throughout minor league baseball. So let me start with what's happening with the Atlantic League. Our season currently is on hold. We have said that we have postponed the start of our season. That's not a surprise. Again, like Eric, I wish we were all in the ball club right now. The season is on hold, but we have not given up hope that we can prevail and begin sometime this year. Unfortunately, that's not a unilateral decision. While we are waiting for the prompts that we're going to need to get going, I can tell you, just like many of you, our teams have taken necessary steps to not only serve their sponsors and their ticket holders, even while we aren't playing ball. All of us have looked at the SBA PPP loan authority, qualified and received PPP loans, and we are doing things that are constructive even though we're not playing games. I've had the absolute privilege to talk with some of you here over recent weeks about the relationship with the Revs, and I can tell you that whether or not you have a relationship with them as a ticket holder, sponsor, advertiser, or otherwise, the Revolution are doing all they can to drive value to the community first, to their business relationships second, and to the community throughout this period. Our current circumstances are difficult. We have to attract people to the ballpark in order to fulfill our economic model. Unlike Major League Baseball or other big league sports, we cannot exist on television revenues because, quite frankly, we don't have broadcast revenues. So we have to attract people to our ballpark, which means that even if following social distancing mandates, we still await a go-ahead based on several different items. First and foremost, we have to take a look at our seating manifests across the league and make sure that we are being presumptive and following the guidelines that have been laid out by government authorities, both at the state and the county level, not to mention municipal guidelines as well. Second, we will not make the determination as to when we start. That's really going to happen with state government first, county government second, and then again, the applicable go-ahead with municipalities. We have to do this in a way that we feature paramount the safety and wellness of the guests we invite to our ballparks. This means that our clubs on literally a daily basis are dealing with medical authorities looking for guidelines, not only for the public health and welfare, but they're also taking a hard look at those constraints we're going to need to operate within as we invite uniform personnel back onto the field. Now, this includes not just the young men who make up the majority of our rosters. This also includes coaches, managers, umpires, and essential staff that have to be on the field both prior to and sometimes during postponements that we incur during a game. So this has become for us somewhat complicated, I can tell you that the clubs are sharing great ideas. Each club has a reopen plan that starts with a relatively standardized format and then is custom tailored to their own needs. And it's been a period of great innovation and, frankly, great exercise of good judgment amongst all of our clubs. The great thing about the Atlantic League is that our board, our founders, and our owners are endurable, and they will in fact survive this year. Unlike some less qualified clubs that you might see in other leagues, this league isn't going away, our owners aren't going away, and our clubs aren't going away. Regardless of what may happen this year, our teams will in fact survive and carry on. We're currently looking to try to play as many games as possible, but as we go forward, each passing day brings us closer to a difficult decision that we may have to make here in the next little while. We have not gone so far as to announce dates where we would either start or have to start by, but at the same time, as you can imagine, sooner or later, we're just not going to be able to play games. And if that dark day comes, we will make an announcement in a timely basis. That aside, we have great reasons to be optimistic about what's happening with the Rebs and with our league. Let me pause for a moment and again describe for you the difference between our league and others that you might have heard about. So think for the moment about Harrisburg, if you will. We do not have a specific relationship with a major league club. All of our teams operate independently of major league clubs, unlike affiliated clubs that you would see portrayed by clubs such as Harrisburg. The benefit of that is we can locate wherever we want, we can create player relationships the way we want, and when our players are called upon to offer their services to a big league organization, we can transfer their contracts to any team in the big leagues that we would like. What's happening though amongst our affiliated brethren is very different. Currently, there are 160 affiliated clubs throughout North America that have direct affiliated relationships with Major League Baseball clubs, ranging from AAA classification all the way down to rookie league and short season A leagues. Major League Baseball, upon the terminus of a professional baseball agreement this September, has announced that they will no longer deal with 160 affiliated clubs. Instead, each major league club will develop affiliated relationships with 4 minor league teams, meaning that 42 ball teams are going to be eliminated from that roster of 160. Now, if you do the math, that means there are going to be 118 left. And I'm very proud to tell you that our Sugarland Club has been invited to become a AAA affiliate of the Houston Astros. We believe that's going to happen. Details are still being worked out, but it's quite a feather in the Atlantic League's cap when Major League Baseball, and in this case, the Houston Astros, reach outside of their current affiliated relationships and invite an independent professional baseball league team to join them. And we're very, very happy it's the Skeeters. And again, we have a plan dealing with that moving forward. The second club is a club in St. Paul, Minnesota, the St. Paul Saints, a member of the American Association. And again, this is a great indicator of the influence independent professional baseball leagues have had on the organized baseball landscape. We are calling this process, following Major League Baseball, contraction. They are contracting out certain clubs. Then they are realigning all of their affiliated relationships. And I am, again, very proud to tell you that we, meaning the Atlantic League, have actually been a part of the discussions with Major League Baseball regarding contraction. The reason for that is it's highly likely we may have additional expansion next year based on certain communities that are eliminated from their respective affiliated relationships, but in fact exist in our territory. We have a plan that we've coordinated with Major League Baseball. We will go out with the commissioner's office and invite certain of those teams to consider acquiring your membership in the Atlantic League. And if you think about that, that's a pretty incredible thing. And I'm really happy to share that with you. It goes to the heart of the innovative spirit and support of the owners in our league and their obligation to try to improve the sport wherever they can. The implications of this for us are pretty remarkable when you think about it. First of all, we may have more teams than 8 next year. And we are currently in discussions with a number of communities in a number of leagues that may result in additional teams in the Atlantic League next year. Second of all, as I indicated earlier, Gastonia, North Carolina is scheduled to come online next year. And again, that is not an easy feat. It takes a long, long time, as you recall, during the years that York was dealing with the establishment of the Revolution, to get these things going, to get ballparks built, and to find ways to finance and ultimately execute those plans. So our outlook as a league is actually quite strong. Third, and Eric, we can go ahead and move forward now. Third, we believe that our relationship with Major League Baseball is going to materially change. We believe that instead of a year-to-year, or in the case of our rules partnership, a 3-year deal, we are going to be moving toward a more permanent relationship with Major League Baseball. I'm not at liberty to describe specifically what that will be, but if all goes well, we will have a much different relationship with MLB, and one that gives us considerably more recognition. So it's a tough year right now. It's something where we're trying to literally figure out day by day what's going to happen. Our teams are prepared for whatever eventuality occurs. Our relationship with Major League Baseball has never been more robust, and that means our strength as a league has never been better. And we expect that our team-by-team landscape is going to change over the next year or so, and we look forward to that. So again, it's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you again for your hospitality, no matter whether in person or digitally, and I'll turn it back over to Eric.
Great, thank you, Rick, and we will be bringing Rick back on at the end as part of our Q&A. But first, let me talk a little bit about where that leaves us as an organization. I'm going to talk just for a second about what we've been doing during this season delay, and then I will talk about the implications of what would happen in the unfortunate situation we don't get to hear those magic words this season. So our priority right now has been keeping in touch with our community and with our fans. And when you stop and think about it, I'm not sure what we would have done in the time before social media, because while I know it annoys us all at times, it is a tremendous tool. So we've been doing things like showing Revolution Classics on Facebook, rebroadcasts of great games from the past. We've also created a show of new content called Beyond the Nemesis. Many of you know that our big left field wall is called the Arch Nemesis because it protects Arch Street. So Beyond the Nemesis is a show hosted by our radio broadcaster, Daryl Henry, that has segments with our manager, with players from the past, and with some guys who are on this year's roster. It's been a lot of fun bringing that around weekly. We've been doing Diamond Doug's Gems of Positivity. Diamond Doug is our on-field host, and during this very difficult time, he's been recording these lighthearted moments that we've been sharing on Facebook, but also bringing attention to the mental health aspects of this crisis and the resources at our partners, WellSpan Health. And speaking of WellSpan, you see downtown there, properly masked. We've been out supporting first responders and healthcare providers in the community with these various sessions where they applaud people as they change shifts and that sort of thing. Fortunately, downtown was deemed an essential worker, which is going to cause problems for me for the long term, because it's bound to go to his head. But in the short term, it's meant that downtown has been able to be out and about. We've also continued our important nonprofit fundraising work. This year, the Community Progress Council is our presenting partner, and normally they'd be the beneficiary of the 50-50 raffle that we would be doing inside our ballpark. So instead, we've been using our live source auction app with a program we're calling Collectibles for a Cause, where we are both auctioning and raffling Revs memorabilia from the past and raising money for the Community Progress Council. And last but not least, we had a very successful drive-through on what would have, well, I say it would have been on our opening night. It was May 8th. It was a deluge that night, so in reality, we would not have played baseball that night, but we were able to operate the drive-through and bring people into the ballpark to buy our #1 bestseller, chicken tenders and fries, and to take a lap around the warning track. If you missed that, we're bringing it back by popular demand this Friday night. You can find those details on our Facebook page or on our website. So that's how we're keeping in touch now. But what if? What if we don't get to play baseball this season? Well, that has implications in 3 ways that I want to talk about: for our sponsors, our advertisers, certainly for all of our season ticket members, for our Skybox owners, those people who patronize us throughout the year. And then it has an implication in the larger community that I want to talk about for a minute. So let's talk about what an alternate 2020 might look like. First of all, I want to emphasize that the York Revolution are a community enterprise. Yes, for sure, we're a private business and our goal is to make a profit. That's how it has to work. But we are more than that, and I think many of you feel that way as well. I'll remind you that back in 2006, it was 55 local businesses that committed to 10-year contracts on 20 skyboxes, a bank that bought the naming rights for 10 years, and 2 extraordinarily generous community philanthropists. All those people working together made those commitments, and that made this ballpark, when it opened, the only professional sports facility in American history that had opened debt-free. We remain one of the very, very few. We were a pioneer in that model. So that spirit has continued on for 13 years of people supporting us, not just to watch 70 baseball games, but to be part of the community. We're committed to keeping Peoples Bank Park open all summer, regardless of whether we can put professional baseball games on the field. And we're committed to bringing our product out to the community through something we're calling the Revs Time Roadshow. So what can we do with Peoples Bank Park if we're not playing baseball? Well, one of the positives for us is that we have outdoor facilities, and it's clear from all the health guidance that outdoor activities are preferred to indoor activities, and we're in the season when those can happen. So we're working right now with a local provider of exercise and physical fitness classes to try to bring exercise classes socially distanced in groups under 25 to our outfield. We have a huge flat soft surface and a sound system. It would be perfectly appropriate until gyms can open to bring some of those classes to the open air at our ballpark. I'd point out that we have the best outdoor conference room in York underneath those yellow picnic tents. That picnic area typically holds 500 people. It can easily hold a meeting of 24 people socially distanced. And we're actually going to be announcing that as a product to the community in the very near future. We're going to hold a Father's Day batting practice with Mark Mason. I'll be looking for details on this if you're interested. Again, under groups of 25, keeping within the government guidelines, but it'll be a chance for people to fulfill a dream and take batting practice on the field with our manager, Mark Mason. And we're working on a plan to bring drive-in movies to the Queen Street parking lot behind the ballpark. These are only 4 examples of what we can do. As the state guidelines are loosened and we're able to have organized sports again, to the extent that there's baseball being played in the York community on an amateur level this summer, whether that's Little League up through adult leagues, we'd love to welcome that to our field. And last but not least, on Friday, we're going to announce a plan that when conditions permit, we're going to hold what we're calling graduate all-star games. We're going to invite high school senior baseball and softball players to register and come out to the ballpark and participate in an all-star team round robin style tournament where we'll put together seniors from various school districts to play against each other. These are all players who lost the opportunity to play their senior season, and we want to be the ones working with coaches and league officials to give them one last chance to put their high school jersey on again. And so we've been working on that in the background. We're going to announce it on Friday and hopefully be able to have it once guidelines permit it later this summer. I also mentioned this Revs Time Roadshow. So many of you have heard me say that we are not a baseball company. We're a hospitality and entertainment company that plays baseball. So now we need to be potentially a hospitality and entertainment company that doesn't play baseball. But if that happens, we're going to bring all of those other aspects out into the community in something we're calling the Revs Time Roadshow. So all of those things that happen between innings, before the game, after the game, all those foul balls where we make funny sounds, the firing of the cannon in the middle of the first inning, we want to bring all of that out to the community. We want to bring Diamond Doug and Downtown and Cannonball Charlie out all over York County. We want to bring music and games and giveaways out all over York County. And we want to do fundraising. You know, one of the things that the community loses when we can't play baseball, if we can't play baseball, is we help organizations raise over $200,000 a year. I often say that we raise $200,000 a year, $500 at a time, because we have hundreds of church youth groups, other kinds of nonprofits, clubs, organizations, many of these very small not-for-profits and churches. They don't have development directors and they don't need to raise $100,000 a year. They just need to raise $750 to take a youth group to go on a mission trip somewhere. So they are playground volunteers, concessions volunteers. They do ticket fundraisers, all kinds of things, jersey auctions. Well, if they can't do those in the ballpark, we want to help them do those out in the community with what we're doing with this Revs Time Roadshow all over York County. And of course, no baseball game would be complete without food. And so we'll have a food element in various ways as part of the Revs Time Roadshow as well. Our plan is initially to bring this out as a thank you to many of our advertisers and sponsors who are sticking with us through this time. So these would be private events, always outdoors in parking lots, behind office buildings or behind construction sites where those have reopened, where we can bring a little 45-minute program at lunchtime out to thank people for what they do for us and to bring all these fun elements around. Later on this summer, again, as restrictions loosen, we hope, we'll be able to do these as public events that we would announce in advance. So maybe on Saturdays, we'd be out at Dover at a People's Bank branch in their parking lot, inviting the community to come, spin the prize wheel, get a free hot dog, whatever that might be, play the 50-50, all kinds of things we can do, all kinds of fun things we can do out in the community all summer. And of course, baseball always involves food, as I mentioned, and in that vein, we have started a new company called Revolution Home Plates. Get it? Revolution Home Plates. It's out of the park, meaning that we are now doing takeout and delivery food service through our company, Revolution Hospitality. Many of you are aware that we took over our own food service after working with a national concessions company for 11 years. Last season, we took it over ourselves. And so now we're turning that inside out as well, and not just doing the drive-through, but doing takeout and delivery as well. And you can find out more and certainly place an order, if you would please, at revolutionhomeplates.com. So no matter what happens this season, it's always Revs time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit. And with that, we can bring Courtney, we can bring Rick back in, and happy to take any questions.
Eric, Rick, thanks very much for the program. It's always great. Love to be at the ballpark today, but we'll take this as second best. Really thank you guys for being here with us today. So let's get to a couple questions. And members, please chime in with your questions on the question box on the screen, and we'll get those read as they come in. So the first question today is, you talked a little bit about the contraction of the minor league system and the affiliated baseball. What do you see, if at all, regarding possible contraction in the majors itself after COVID, or just because of the overall situation in baseball and declining attendance and things like that over the last few years?
I don't think that there's any sense within the sport that any of the 30 Major League Baseball clubs are in jeopardy of seeing their demise. They're going to continue. I think the chances they play this year are actually pretty good because they can rely upon broadcast revenues. But I don't think any of those clubs are going to go away in the near future. I wouldn't be surprised, however, if a few years down the road they actually expand by 2 communities, but that's way down the road.
So what's the current thinking at the major league level about the season and where that's going to go?
The broad national media has been very focused on if Major League Baseball is going to play, and they want to play. The current plan is to house expanded rosters in all but just a couple of major league stadiums, not their spring training headquarters, with the exception of the Toronto Blue Jays. They expect that they will start their season sometime in July. They expect they'll start it without fans in the stands and have it be broadcast only. I'd be very surprised if they didn't stack broadcasts virtually one after the other on most days of the week. They have a way of, they have a ready-made audience with people who are working remotely across the country. Their biggest single issue at the moment is an agreement regarding compensation with the Major League Baseball Players Association. But once that is complete, and I believe it will be completed here in the not too distant future, they have reams of manuals they have produced trying to ensure the safety of uniformed personnel, on-field personnel, and support personnel. But they've really done an extensive job trying to make this happen.
And so both at the Atlantic League level and at the Major League level, how might social distancing be implemented on a seat-by-seat or row-by-row or section-by-section basis at the ballpark?
Well, I can take that one first because we're the ones on the ground here that we've certainly been looking at that. So really the way I think about this is the most significant impact for us is that social distancing rules become capacity constraints. So for instance, if we were to look at our seating bowl, our lower seating bowl holds 4,400 people. If you go out there and start taking a tape measure out and looking at 6-foot distances, 4,400 fixed seats yields you about 1,000 seats that can be occupied, allowing everybody to put 6 feet between themselves and another fan. Now, we all know that people come to baseball games for the most part with families and with households. So those people are going to want to sit together. And that's perfectly fine. That's their choice as consumers. But what we don't think we would be in a position to do as an operator is to sell more tickets than what the 6-foot social distancing restriction would dictate using that 6-foot distance in the seating bowl. So that's an example of how social distancing requirements translate into capacity constraints. Once people get here, if they choose to sit together, well then, as households, that's fine, but we need to put everyone in a position where they can stay distant. Then beyond that, there are certainly implications for picnic areas and hospitality areas and skyboxes and concourses and bathrooms and concessions. All of these are things that need to be figured out. Frankly, they're the same challenges that are facing Major League Baseball, and it's why they're contemplating the season starting without fans. I would believe that later on in the baseball season, certainly in certain areas, that they would start to throttle that back a little bit and start to allow some low levels of fans into some buildings. Probably start with season ticket holders for sure. But there are, Rick mentioned these extensive protocols. Once you start pulling the thread on how you put even 1,000 or 1,500 people into a minor league ballpark and observe all of the appropriate protocols, it really is a big challenge. Honestly, I think it's something that we may be looking at for more than even one season. So we're taking it very seriously now in terms of how we incorporate that into our business and our business model.
All right, Eric, this one's for you too. What are you planning to do, if anything, with the 1741 Club? You mentioned some other portions of the ballpark that you might be using. What about the 1741 Club?
Yes, thank you. And this is not just for the baseball season, because of course things like the 1741 Club are year-round venues, and we still have plenty of events that are on the books for late summer into the fall outside of baseball games. The real answer is going to depend on what happens with restaurants and hospitality venues as restrictions start to loosen. The 1741 Club, it would be very easy to have an event of 25 or 50 people in there now and still maintain appropriate distancing. But we view the 1741 Club as a restaurant, and so we don't think until restaurants are permitted to operate, even at reduced capacity, that we can allow people indoors into the 1741 Club. I think the good news is we are starting to see restrictions loosen, and I think as we go through the summer, those restrictions will peel back, and I think we will be able to do events, again, initially low-intensity events in the 1741 Club and then ramping them up. We certainly have spent the last 6 or 8 weeks looking at all the disinfecting and distancing and food safety and other protocols that we would need to operate that. But we do think that certainly as we go through the summer and into the fall, smaller, low-intensity events are possible. Now, the other question we all have to ask ourselves is, how do people feel safe? When do they feel safe? Do people really want to come to a social event wearing a mask? That sort of thing. We're really all feeling our way together in the hospitality industry on that very point.
Next question is there a least number of games that you would need to play in the season to make it worthwhile playing?
Rick, you want to take a first crack at that for the league?
Our clubs have expressed their desire to have roughly 35 home games if we're going to play. We have a couple of things pinching us at both ends of that equation. Number one, we do have an existing schedule. Under the prevailing thought process, we would pick up that schedule and then fill in games. Likely we would eliminate our all-star game break. But then as we move through the year, we have to be cautious that we don't book too many games too late in the fall. We don't want to interfere with back to school if back to school occurs. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we're taking account of weather. But if we go forward, we'll try to accommodate roughly 35 home games for each team.
Great. Next question is, what are the players doing? You have a roster of players and you spend all the offseason building that roster of players, and are they twiddling their thumbs? Are they hitting the weight room? What kind of things are they doing here at this point in time?
Yeah, I'm laughing as you asked that question, Josh, because I talk to occasionally to Mark Mason, our manager, of course, and he tells me that he gets about 15 text messages a day from guys, asking if we're ready to start. And he jokes and says, don't worry, we're not going to start without you. So for the most part, our players are tremendously antsy. If you think about this, these are professional athletes who live their life on a rhythm. A circular schedule rhythm the year round, whether it's just playing baseball in the summer in the US, but in lots of cases playing baseball other places in the world in what would be our off season. And so they are holed up at home for the most part, very, very antsy. A couple or three of our players are still outside the United States, and that presents a particular challenge as to when things could reopen or restart, because it could be difficult to have those players travel internationally before a player could drive, say, from Pittsburgh to York. We have players on our roster that are in the state of Pennsylvania. For the most part, those players are doing their best to stay in shape. Most of them have access to a high school field locally. I've seen a lot of video clips that they have posted on social media of them throwing or hitting off of a tee against a screen at the local elementary school, that sort of thing. We do think if we have the opportunity to get started, that we don't need a protracted spring training. The idea would be able to try to get going pretty quickly. All the teams would be on a level playing field at that point. So there's no competitive advantage or disadvantage to a short-term spring training. We would expect, as we always do, frankly, our players to report in shape, because even with our normal 10-day or 2-week spring training, our players need to report ready to play.
So with that, are any of the players currently in York with their host families, or none of them here locally?
No, none of them are here locally. And, saying the words host families presents another logistical challenge. The thought of sending 25 players into the homes of people they don't know, or they may know them from past seasons, but, they're coming from all over the country. That's another logistical challenge. So when Rick talks about sort of all of the logistical challenges that face any professional league, that is certainly one of them.
So here's a funny one: is Mark Mason sporting the long hair or the short hair?
Mark Mason is sporting the long hair, but he promised Wellington Hotel on a bet that if we can get a season going and the Revs make the playoffs, the players can cut his hair.
And that's got to be a charity event, right? You got to raise some money with that.
That's right. Raise some money for CPC.
Rick, you had mentioned that there were going to be potentially additional teams added to the league in coming seasons because of the contraction at the minor league level of affiliated baseball. How might that addition of teams affect the number of games in the season?
I don't think it would have a material effect on it. We've always prided ourselves on a full season, which means 70 home games, 140 total games for each team. I don't think we would see that. What we would see, though, would be fewer appearances by visiting clubs into York. It's all going to depend on us growing by twos. We try to grow evenly so we don't have scheduling issues with one team being off and everybody else playing. And we still have a lot of work to do on that, but we are well down the road in our discussions with MLB. What we await is a final contraction list. And then, like I said, with MLB, we will approach those communities and explore whether or not they would find it suitable, as would we, for them to become Atlantic League teams.
Hey, Josh, I'll jump in and supplement that answer with an observation here, if I may. You know, a lot of people that are on this meeting go way back with this effort to bring minor league baseball to York, and many of you will remember these debates about affiliated baseball and so-called independent baseball. I prefer to call it non-affiliated baseball, but whatever. You know, it really is interesting to look back 13 or 14 years that the Atlantic League has been playing baseball in York. And when you look at the circumstances in which we find ourselves now, I certainly like our position as a non-affiliated team with the opportunity to control our own destiny and the opportunity to be part of an enterprise that's really growing and going to be flourishing. So it is very interesting how these things change over time. I certainly like where we're sitting as a member of the Atlantic League.
Well, and then what number of teams would make sense in the Atlantic League from an operational perspective?
We think an ideal number would be a dozen. That would allow us to create 3 divisions based on geography. But we can work again in pairs, so 8, 10, 12, all the way up to 16 we could see, but I don't think 16's in the immediate future. It would be down the line.
And how far afield geographically might those teams be? You know, can we still call it the Atlantic League?
Actually, I think we're going to have a better chance of calling it the Atlantic League appropriately now than we have over the last few years with the team in Texas. We will probably end in the Carolinas on the southern tier. We'll probably go slightly into New England, depending on availability of communities. I could see us going a little west, but I don't see us going outside of, let's say, the state of Pennsylvania and, you know, and its western borders.
Eric, historically, you've always had a great affiliation with local kid level baseball, little league, et cetera. With those teams not playing either this year, is there a way to stay connected with those local organizations?
Yes, absolutely. And so the first thing I would say is I sure hope they get to play and do something at some point. And if we can't play, we would love to have them in our ballpark. I will tell you that there's nothing more than I like seeing is little leaguers or high school players on our field. I don't know if Phil is on, but you know, the last 3 or 4 years, we've had a little league game on our field before our Revs game at our Fan Fest event, and it's really so much fun. I mean, many times the kids struggle to get the ball from third to first, but that's part of why it's fun. So our first priority would be, if there can be youth, amateur, adult amateur baseball this season, would be to invite those teams to come into our field and to use our ballpark to do that. Obviously, that requires a lot of things to happen, but that is our goal. Beyond that, we've been doing some things to stay connected to those groups virtually. So, for instance, we hosted 2 Zoom clinics. John Deitch, our team doctor from WellSpan Sports Medicine, and Mark Mason, our manager, did a session on how to stay fit and how to stay sharp while you have to practice at home. If this drags on, we can do more things like that. In fact, WellSpan Sports Medicine has an ongoing series now that's being Zoomed from our clubhouse to stay in touch with those athletes. The other thing that I can say and make a pitch for is, you know, our annual make a pitch for. I just realized that is our annual golf tournament. You know, every year that tournament raises money for York City Little League and for the YMCA Strong Kids campaign. And with golf courses reopened, even if our team is not here, we made the decision this morning that we're going to press on with that golf tournament. and we're going to be fun and creative about it, and we're going to invite the community to come play, and we're going to raise money for those two organizations that benefit youth athletes in York County. So we're all in on keeping that partnership with youth baseball strong.
All right, in the interest of time, we got one final question. So everybody who has been to a York Revolution game gets to know downtown and gets to know Cannonball Charlie. So how are those two folks spending their time here with No Ballpark? Are they out and about in the community?
Well, downtown has certainly been out and about in the community with his mask, and again on that Wellspan tour with their facilities, thanking their employees. We've also done a couple private drive-by birthday parties for some of our season ticket holders. So I happen to be the fortunate owner of a convertible that says "Go Revs" on the license plate, and so I can fit downtown in my passenger seat with the roof open. So we've taken downtown on some drive-by birthday parties, which has made some kids very, very happy. Cannonball Charlie has been helping us out from home. You know, as part of our book club, Blues Book Club, we touch 20-some thousand kids a year, and we were able to get all of those bookmarks out in a mad scramble as schools were coming to a close. So Cannonball Charlie has been reading kids' books through, on our social media to try to keep that book club effort going and encourage kids to read and have a good time. And he's done some other things for us as well. He's participated in some fun dance videos. And again, we hope to be able to spring him here from his quarantine pretty soon and be part of that Revs Time Roadshow.
Rick and Eric, thanks so much for being our presenters today.
You're welcome.
And thanks for making this the best day ever for Rotary.
Thanks so much for having us.
In honor of the presentation today, we will find a way to get Rick and Eric to sign the book plate in the book called Johnny Boo and the Ice Cream Computer. And what better way to finish up a program about baseball than with some ice cream? So again, Rick, Eric, thanks so much. Really appreciate the program today. Look forward to hopefully seeing you next season back at Peoples Bank Park, and hopefully later this summer there for a Revs game. Next week, we will hear from Janet Donovan, who is the president and CEO of the Girl Scouts in the heart of Pennsylvania. And she'll be talking about what Girl Scouting is doing in 2020. And just remember that as we had hot dogs today, next week is Bring Your Own Girl Scout Cookie Day to Rotary. So if you have any boxes of Girl Scout cookies in your kitchen or in your pantry, please pull those out for next week's meeting and munch on those during our presentation. I'd like to thank Rick again and Eric. Eric, a special shout out. Thank you for the hot dogs that you delivered to my office today. Really appreciate those. I will take a few home to share with the boys as well. And I really appreciate the Revs and all that you do and are as part of our community here in York. Rotarians, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week. This meeting is adjourned.